Well, for some, RFK is their nightmare. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's great to get it rolling here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming every morning, all day actually, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been named the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Donald Trump has appointed him to that role. He still has to get confirmed, but he has appointed him to that role. And the meltdowns are next level. Now, I'm not surprised by this. These two built a rapport over their last few months when RFK Jr. obviously dropped out of the presidential race and endorsed Donald Trump. The question was always whether or not RFK was going to get an appointment of this nature or if he was going to remain in an informal advisory role. And obviously, Donald Trump trusted him enough to appoint him the head of the HHS. Now, the meltdowns are awfully rich because it was just back in 2008 when Barack Obama seriously considered RFK to run the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Now, here's the thing about RFK. I think he's got a lot of bad ideas. But I think for this role, he's a guy that I have no problem with as the Secretary of HHS, Health and Human Services. And the main reason for that is because his craziest ideas that I don't care for have nothing to do with HHS. Barack Obama putting him in charge of the EPA would have been bad. He's got a lot of green energy ideas that even Donald Trump is well aware of and has joked about publicly. He does not want Bobby Kennedy, as he calls him. I think he calls him Bobby. He does not want Bobby anywhere near energy policy in this country, and neither should you. But RFK Jr. is somebody who has really embraced and been willing to talk about some of the things that we are putting in our bodies, most notably the food that we eat every day, and how unhealthy it is. And how you do have some of the big food, big pharma groups who are completely fine with it because guess what? The worse our food is, the more medicine we need, the more health care we need, and who makes money then? And that has been an incredibly important point for RFK. And a lot of these things that we have in our food here in America are not allowed to be in the food that people are consuming in Europe and in Canada. So here's just one video from RFK's social media where he talks about this stuff. And these are the things. If RFK Jr. can make a mild improvement, just a mild improvement into the health of our nation based on what we consume every day, then his stint as Secretary of Health and Human Services will be a very positive one in my eyes. I don't think this guy's going to show up and start, removing all the vaccines in the country and saying, you don't have to take this, I don't think he's going to do that. Now, it could be proven wrong, but I don't think that's where this is going. RFK Jr. is very passionate about trying to clean up the crap that we consume oftentimes unknowingly.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way. Until the early 1990s, our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't really notice as we got sicker and sicker. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now, in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? Well, a big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos, Cheez-Its, Captain Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons.
Doritos, Cheez-Its, Captain Crunch. I think I just listed John's daily meal intake there from RFK. But you look at this and you say to yourself, hey, this is a guy who is trying to dramatically, through reasonable regulation, right? Like at the very least, improving the warning signs that we have on the food that we eat. Because you can totally make the argument of the government's not going to tell me what to eat. They're not going to tell me what I can intake. Okay, fine. All right. Well, improving our warning labels, which they do in Europe with certain things that we all consume, things like yellow dye 5, is at the very least the bare minimum that we can start doing. And if those are the kind of changes that RFK wants to bring to our food industry and at least bring awareness, I'm all for it. Ask yourself this. Do you know who the current HHS secretary is? I'll give you a second to think about it. The current Health and Human Services secretary is who? Xavier Becerra. You're going to hear a lot of people crying, and you probably did. Maybe you did last night on TV, and you'll hear it again today, and you'll hear it all weekend about RFK's qualifications. Xavier Becerra is the current Health and Human Services secretary. And his big qualification is being the first Latino to hold the position. I kid you not. He was previously a member of Congress and an attorney general in the state of California. He's a lawyer. He became the HHS secretary. I don't want to hear from people who are saying, oh, he's not qualified. Okay, Donald Trump's going to make the appointment, and then what you're going to see and what you've seen over the last 12 hours is a ton of fear-mongering. I don't know why. You knew that Trump was going to keep RFK around in some capacity. This should not be a shock to anybody. And if Make America Healthy Again becomes a movement in this country, then we're all better off for it. The trust in public health officials are at an all-time low. The country is as unhealthy as it's ever been. The obesity rates continue to skyrocket. As RFK Jr. said there, too, we do have life expectancy rates lower than most of our peer countries. And it's also worse when you go down the socioeconomic scale. Oftentimes, why? People can't afford to eat healthier when you go down the socioeconomic ladder. So if we can just make some tweaks into what is in our food, what is not in our food, warning labels, if those are the things that RFK is most passionate about, that will have a mild improvement for what we consume on a daily basis, we'll be better off as a country. The hysteria is absurd right now. He's going to remove all the vaccine requirements and, oh my gosh, the measles and mumps and smallpox are coming back. Stop. You're seeing this with every single person that Trump nominates. Eventually, these people are the boy who cried wolf. There's been one bad pick so far as I can tell, and that's Gates. The rest, it's just all media noise is what it is. 913-408-7957, our text line and our studio line on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, I would also argue that today's portions in America are huge with a Y. Well, that's true if you go out to eat. I don't know. You get a bag of chips these days from the vending machine, and the thing's mostly air, and it's like $2. So I may disagree with you when it comes to certain things, but yes, there's no doubt about it. You go to other countries, and they don't eat like pigs like we do here. That's absolutely true. And then what does it do? It costs us an enormous amount of money in health care for the American people, right? Through Medicare, Medicaid, and that entire industry is now largely a government-adjacent industry, meaning the government plays an enormous role in the costs in the healthcare field. And as we get unhealthier and unhealthier and unhealthier, well, that's only going to get worse, which means it's only going to cost us, the taxpayer, more money. 913-408-7957. Happy Friday morning. We've got news here locally that I know is already dramatic and controversial. Frank White actually making a good decision we'll get to this hour, proving that even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. Happy Friday, Pete Mundo on KCMO. Let me respond to this. This is a great point. I'm glad that some of you brought this up on the text line, 913-408-7957. I just talked about RFK Jr. being the selected Health and Human Services Secretary by Donald Trump. And the big passion thing for this guy is the food that we eat, the garbage that we consume, and how it is less healthy than it is in other countries, in part because of what the FDA allows the food makers to put in our food. It's oftentimes highly addictive stuff. It's things that are, sneakily put in there, yellow dye 5, things like that just should not be in our food. In some countries, they don't allow that in their food. If they do, there are big warning labels. So on the text line, Pete, you people hate regulations, screaming deregulate. Now you want to regulate. I'm glad you brought that up. I really am. Because I understand that some people are going to scream about, wait, you guys love deregulation. Now you want to regulate food. Well, no, I don't want to regulate how much food you can eat. I don't. I don't want to regulate, the big gulps like Michael Bloomberg tried to do in New York, or did do in New York back in the day. Remember that controversy? You're not going to take the big gulp away from me.
No 64-ounce drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big Bloomberg thing. But it was more about, and this case is more about, hey, you eat your heart out. You want to be a slob? I'm not here to stop you. This is still America, right? If you want to be a slob, please. Have a field day doing it. I am not going to be the guy to tell you you cannot be a slob. I'm not here to tell you you can't smoke cigarettes. But just like with smoking cigarettes, when we got smarter about what smoking can do to you, we put on proper warning labels. We at least ran a campaign around the awareness of smoking, and what's happened? Less people are smoking. Now, amazingly, we're less healthy. So it's like as we've smoked less, we've gotten less healthy. There's not a direct correlation there between smoking and health. It's just fascinating how we've replaced these things because of what we consume and what else we put into our bodies that is total crap that we don't realize we're putting into our bodies. And that's the level of processed foods and what is in these processed foods. But RFK is not saying you get one bag of Doritos a day. He's not saying one box of Cheez-Its a month. That's it. That's all you're going to buy. It's about making sure people know what they're consuming. And also, yes, putting some of the emphasis on the companies who are producing the food that we eat and making sure they're producing it as healthily as possible. Example, Fruit Loops. If you look at the back of a box of Fruit Loops, you will see all the artificial dye that they put in Fruit Loops. Compare that to the Fruit Loops that they make in Canada. What do they use in the Fruit Loops in Canada? They use fruit and vegetable dye. You can see that on the back of the boxes in Canada compared to the U.S. where it's all the artificial stuff. The artificial stuff is what creates the addictive nature in large part of that cereal that makes you just want more and more and more and more of it. And they were supposed to ban it in the U.S. a decade ago, and they said they were going to get rid of it a decade ago and make it like Canada, and they didn't do it. But I'm not sitting here saying that you shouldn't be able to eat all the Fruit Loops you want. That is in no way the case I'm making, and I haven't really heard RFK make that case either. 913-408-7957. Let's start with Mike. Go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Okay, the woke only see things in a binary sense, yes or no. We on the conservative side, we on the libertarian side see things, on a broad spectrum. Regulation without justification may be wrong, but some of these regulations are justified. I'm sitting at a red light, a traffic light. That's justified. The government has the right to tell me when a light's red that I should stop because, I'm on a public road. Likewise, with the food supply, the macromolecules and all this junk that you can put in food to save money has deleterious effects on the human body. I suggest anybody in your audience go out and buy a bottle of Mexican Coke, which is readily available in Kansas City, which is sweetened with sucrose, and drink it to a bottle of American Coke. You'll definitely see the difference in the taste, and the human body metabolizes the glucose or the sucrose in a natural manner, where the high fructose corn syrup is metabolized in a way that screws up the insulin system. So, yes, we need people who are educated scientists that make sure the food supply is safe and make sure that whatever they're putting in the food is not to save money for the corporations, but, to make something that we have a food supply. They used to be able to buy tapeworm eggs by mail order for weight loss. And, I think everybody would agree, conservative, liberal, that needed to be stopped.
Yeah.
And all these junk they're putting in the food is another thing. We need to get, I'm not a granola head by any means, but I do know how the human body metabolizes. And some of these things really mess with our metabolism, the insulin mechanism and everything else, and that's why we're obese.
And the obesity rate has never been higher. Thank you very much, Mike. Go ahead, Wes. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, Pete, why I'm excited about RFK Jr. is in November of 2021, he wrote a book entitled The Real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health. COVID was initiated by Fauci. He funded it. He's directly responsible for COVID. And between RFK Jr. and Rand Paul, I hope this man is finally brought to justice for what he did to the world. Now, that may sound like a conspiracy theory, but read this book and listen to Rand Paul talk about how Fauci funded COVID.
Well, it's really about the gain of function research.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that is pretty much well known when it comes to Fauci's role in gain of function research. Now, how directly that led to COVID is obviously something people will debate, but the gain of function research is not debatable, to your point.
And he lied to Congress about that.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you think that RFK is now going to, get revenge against Fauci in this role, I don't believe that's going to happen. Do you?
I don't know. Well, Pete, I don't know that he'll get revenge. I'd like to see justice, but he's going to not only food, but he's going after the drug establishment too. He's going after big pharma, and that's a good thing. But like you said, don't let him near energy policy.
No, don't let him near the EPA. All right, leave that. Yeah, don't let him near any of that stuff.
And speaking of slobs, boy, do I like Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Boy, I love Thanksgiving.
Well done. And as many are saying on the text line, and if I can look like RFK at 70 years old, sign me up for that.
Oh, that guy's something else, man.
Yeah.
He makes me feel bad at 67. I'm like, holy crap.
Got to run. Thank you, Wes. Little did I know that the clip I was going to play from Bill O'Reilly was part of the morning update. See, I don't know what's in the morning update. I just found a clip from Bill last night, and then there it was in the morning update talking about Matt Gaetz and some of the recent appointments from Donald Trump. So I don't even need to play the clip because you just heard it here on KCMO. So you heard him say about Matt Gaetz that it's one big double middle finger to the establishment in large part. And yes, the media will crucify Matt Gaetz. But Bill then alluded to something that I have been thinking about the last 12 hours with Gaetz as he's dealing or was dealing with this House ethics investigation. Is he worth it? I keep coming back to that. Is Matt Gaetz worth it? And the more I think about it, the more I keep coming to the conclusion that Trump knows that Matt Gaetz is not going to get confirmed. Matt Gaetz knows that Matt Gaetz is not going to get confirmed. And Trump, in large part, is okay with that. It happens every once in a while where a nominee does not get confirmed. But Matt Gaetz is basically going to fall on the sword and will take all the energy in the room away from Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, because everyone's going to be like, we can't have Gaetz as the AG. He's horrible, this, that, the next thing. And everybody else will sail through. I don't believe there's going to be a lot of pushback with several of these nominations by Donald Trump. I think at this point, based on how the election went last week, you can't possibly not confirm multiple nominees from Donald Trump with the Republican Party in the majority of the U.S. Senate. I don't believe that can happen. I don't believe it will happen. But if Gaetz is the one guy who does not get confirmed, then everyone else does. I think Trump would take that as a win. Because there's plenty of people who can do the job as Attorney General. You got the Paxton guy down in Texas who'd be great. Andrew Bailey here in Missouri was in the mix. I told you to start the show on Wednesday that I had it on good authority that Bailey was at Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday. I talked to somebody Tuesday night and Wednesday morning who confirmed that Bailey met down at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump. And then yesterday, CNN reported that Andrew Bailey was down at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump, but that Trump was really not in love with any of the candidates that he had met with. And then what CNN reported is that while Donald Trump was on a plane, I guess that would have been Wednesday, must have been when he was going up to meet with Biden. He basically was sitting there on the plane. Gaetz was on the plane. Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, was in the other room. And he kind of was like, you know what? All right, we're going to go with Gaetz. Like, it was just literally shoot from the hip decision out of nowhere. Surprised a lot of people to go with Matt Gaetz. So I don't know if it's actually 4D chess. I don't know if it's actually about protecting Gaetz from this House ethics investigation. I don't know. All I know is of all the picks that Trump has made, they mostly have been really good. And Gaetz is the one where I'm like, this guy's just not worth it. Like, genuinely just not worth it. And that's okay. I mean, did you really think you were going to agree with every single pick? No one should regret what they voted for last week. Guy just, going to miss one here and there. That's all right. It's not a big deal. It's not like I'm going nuts over it. It's just, he's just not worth it, right? That's the conclusion I keep coming back to. There are plenty of very competent people who would make an outstanding attorney general for this administration. Why it's got to be this guy, I don't really know. But I think deep down, Trump's got to know that the confirmation process will be very, very difficult. Now, for those of you saying it will be a recess appointment, that's gotten a lot of attention. That is not as easy as some people are making it out to be. Both chambers have to agree to recess, have to agree to allow it to happen through a recess appointment. And also, I don't think it'd be a great look for Trump. I mean, you got all the power in the world right now. You've got the Senate, you've got the House. You don't want to be doing recess appointments. You want to make it look like you've got everything on the up and up. Everyone's on the same page as you kick this thing off in January. And I don't want to waste a lot of equity and capital on getting this guy confirmed, John.
Right, and it also eliminates the media frenzy, the feeding on the Matt Gaetz to be a distraction as Trump tries to get traction in his first few days.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
We're going to go ahead and put this fire out with a fire.
Yeah, you want to just get off and running, man. Mm-hmm. That's what you want to do in January. You don't want to waste precious time getting Gaetz confirmed. I don't see the value in it. And that's what I keep coming back to. There are people in life who are worth the headache. I'm very confident this ain't it. 913-408-7957. We will have Sean Smith, a Jackson County legislator, here at 7:50 after Frank White vetoed a gun ordinance that the legislature passed earlier in the week. Meantime, the criticism continues all over cable news, and it's actually pretty fun to watch. We'll keep that rolling right after the news on KCMO. I thought some people might wait till January to start breaking out the white supremacist card, but I guess it's never too early, right? I mean, if you're a white supremacist today, you'll be one in 3 months, so might as well break it out now. Start getting that conversation, getting that talking point off and running. That's what happened last night on MSNBC about Pete Hegseth, Fox News TV host, who has been nominated to be the next Secretary of Defense. Sherilyn Ifill, MSNBC. Let's roll the tape.
The Secretary of Defense nominee, Peter Hegseth, the Fox News commentator as well, because this is someone who, weekend host, important distinction. This is someone who, known to be a white supremacist, known to be an extremist, whose platform, whose book is basically about his opposition to the advancement of black officers to the top brass.
Okay, yes, a white supremacist who will stop black people from getting promoted in the Department of Defense inside the Pentagon. Boy, that is an awfully terrible thing to say about somebody without any kind of evidence whatsoever. Like, that is one of the most slanderous things you can say about somebody. They're a white supremacist who will prevent black people from getting promoted, but that's where the hysteria is at already on MSNBC.
I object to the word known.
Yeah, known.
Right. So that then makes it a fact for people who just go ahead and buy it.
That's a good point.
When they say he's a known.
A known. Right. Mm-hmm. According to who?
No.
According to who? Your dreams?
There you go. Right
your
there's
fantasies?
Where you stop it. Wait.
Yes.
Known to who?
To who? To MSNBC, obviously.
I stand corrected.
As Chris Hayes sits there with his dopey glasses thinking he looks smart because he's got those nerdy glasses on his face. Goodness gracious. This is the kind of stuff that is driving MSNBC's ratings in the toilet. Have you seen that their ratings are down 50% since before the election? I mean, it is insane. Viewers are fleeing MSNBC in the wake of the election, and they're flocking to Fox. This is from the New York Times. So, they're not looking to put this spin on it. Headline, viewers flee MSNBC, flock to Fox News. Primetime viewership on MSNBC has fallen 53% from October and jumped 21% on Fox News. The Rachel Maddow Show, Liberal Network's highest-rated program, drew 1.3 million viewers on Monday. That is 1 million shy of her October average per Nielsen. In a crucial ratings metric, viewers under the age of 54, sorry, but if you're over 54, we love you still on KCMO, but it's all about that 25 to 54 number, baby.
That's a harsh reality for me in this business.
I know. It's okay,
At
John.
55, I'm no longer needed.
I know. But listen, that's why right now, if you're between 25 and 54, you're extra valuable. We love you. Mm-hmm. We love you so much. The Rachel Maddow Show, in that demographic, under 54, it was their least watched edition of the show since April of 2022. That performance mirrors much of what is happening at MSNBC in the weeks since Donald Trump's election win. MSNBC has averaged 550,000 viewers since Election Day, a 40% decline compared with the network's average in October. In prime time, MSNBC's audience has declined 53%. Now, at Fox, the opposite's happened. The audience in prime time has grown 21%, with an average of 3.3 million viewers. Its total day audience has jumped 38%. Now, do I think this will even out over time? I do. Listen, I remember post-2020, Donald Trump loses, and a lot of you just said to me that you had to check out for a few weeks, And that's understandable. I get it. When your team loses, you're like, oh, gosh, that stunks. I got to move on for a little bit. I got to do something else, and I'll be back. So I'm sure that's part of it. But I also believe that MSNBC probably is not understanding what just happened. And the evidence of that is exactly what you heard last night on this most recent clip, where you have guests who are on television saying that the people that are getting selected by Donald Trump are known white supremacists, like Pete Hegseth. That was Sherilyn Ifill. She's the president and director of the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Wow, there's a shocker.
Talk about a bombshell.
Couldn't believe that. Didn't see that coming, right? But that wasn't where it ended. You had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also on that network last night and saying this about another Trump nomination, Tulsi Gabbard.
And we haven't even gotten to Tulsi Gabbard potentially having access to national security information. And Russia loves it, loves her.
And I actually think almost more than Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard's appointment is devastating. And Tulsi Gabbard's nomination, as much as she says that she's an anti-war person, she's not.
Yeah.
She supports very pro-war individuals,
including
abroad.
in Syria.
And let's be very clear, a Tulsi Gabbard nomination is a pro-war nomination globally. Point blank, period.
As is Donald Trump as president of the United States.
What? Oh, my goodness. I mean, that is insane to make such a statement. You tell me, when you compare the last 8 years and the two resumes of the individuals who have been in the White House, you tell me who was more pro-war based on what the world has looked like. Donald Trump's clear peace through strength position, or Joe Biden's weakness at every turn, resulting in chaos at almost every corner of the globe that has emboldened some of the worst actors on the planet to start making moves. Whether it's Xi in China starting to threaten Taiwan, whether it's Putin going into Ukraine, whether it's the Middle East, where the worst actors have been funded by Iran and have obviously done things like October 7th last year.
You need to verbalize your punctuation like AOC there. That means you super really mean it.
Should I start talking in
period?
Period. Exclamation point.
Yes.
Comma.
End of sentence.
Apostrophe. Semicolon.
Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard's another one of those picks that I don't think is perfect. Wouldn't have been my ideal choice. But here's the thing. This is the coalition that we all knew Donald Trump was building. There were people who are lifelong Democrats, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, that Donald Trump used to build a Big Tent coalition that saw the most diverse coalition in the Republican Party in my lifetime. So it's not about who I think is the perfect pick, the most pure pick. They're not surprising picks based on how the campaign went. And for AOC to get up there and say Tulsi Gabbard and Trump are the pro-war candidates, you tell me, who has continued to dump billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars into Ukraine, which I'm actually okay with to an extent because it keeps our troops from going anywhere. But they have no checks and balances. There is no transparency in any of that money. They continue to make mistake after mistake when it comes to foreign policy. And Trump took the approach of peace through strength, which was not the approach, to be clear, of George W. Bush. George W. Bush's approach, which completely failed the American people, was this whole, we're going to go into places and we're going to be freedom fighters. Well, in hindsight, that was incredibly foolish and a really bad idea. That's not the approach that Donald Trump took during his 4 years in office, and it led in large part to mostly peace all over the world, and the worst actors were kept in check. And now I've got AOC and Joy Reid gaslighting me, saying that Trump's the candidate of war?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard's loved by Russia.
Oh, I know.
Known to be loved by Russia. Shouldn't we say that?
You should probably say it.
Because, Russia now might invade the Ukraine or something.
Right. Who knows? I mean, it's truly next-level gaslighting, but it also is not a surprise. And then they wonder why the ratings are down 53% in the last month. Is MAHA actually better than MAGA? There's a strong case to make that the answer to that is absolutely yes. If we get on board with making America healthy again, and that doesn't just mean through Ozempic and Wegovy. Those things are nice. I know a lot of people who are taking them, the whole deal. But if we get people back to a place where we realize the amount of crap that we're putting into our bodies and the amount of nonsense that we are allowing companies to put into our bodies, then that is a big win. If RFK, as the Health and Human Services Secretary, can make a minor dent in that, it will be a massive win for America going forward. Our obesity rates in this country continue to skyrocket. I mean, it is totally out of control. Our obesity rates are now 43%. At the turn of the century, it was at 30%. Do the math on that. It's up 45% in the last less than 25 years. Severe obesity is continuing to become more common, it seems like, by the year. Obesity rates have tripled over the last 60 years. 10% are now morbidly obese. Now, is some of this due to lifestyle and due to the fact that it is easier than ever to sit around and do nothing and swipe on your phone? Yes. Do we need more activity? No doubt about it. It's not just about what we eat, but what we eat is an enormous part of it. You go back 2 generations and people were smoking cigarettes left and right, but nobody was fat. Yet now we have this world where the obesity rates continue to skyrocket. And the lower down the socioeconomic groupings you go, the more likely it is. It's more expensive than ever to eat healthy. I went out last night to get some ground beef. I took the 2 older girls with me to Hy-Vee. And I'm not ragging on Hy-Vee when I tell this story. That's not the point. This is true anywhere you go buy food right now. But a pound of organic ground beef was $9.99. And that pound of ground beef, that was done with dinner between all of us. Probably could have done a pound and a half. But I picked up a pound, and it was gone about 3/4 of the way through dinner. It's expensive to be healthy. It's expensive to eat healthily. And if you just had some tweaks in what we allow and what the FDA allows to go in our food, you would start to see, I think, a slow improvement. Would it prevent people from being slobs and eating a lot of Doritos? No, and I don't want to do that. I'm not here to tell you you can't drink a lot of soda, you can't eat all the chips you want, but can we do little things that other countries do to make the food a little healthier? Can that have dramatic long-term impacts on the healthcare system in the country, which is a total wreck? Yeah, I think so. Do I want RFK to go into HHS and start, changing vaccine mandates and this, that, and the next thing? No, I don't. Not without overwhelming evidence. But can he be the person who is a face of making America healthy again? Absolutely. Look at the guy. Jack, you look like that at 70. The guy's a beast. How many of you, I know, I'm not trying to embarrass anybody or make you feel bad about yourself. You want to look like that guy at 70? Sign me up for that. Last night, Jillian Michaels, of all people, who is now an out-of-the-closet Donald Trump voter. Who would have seen that coming? Jillian Michaels was on Fox News last night, was talking about RFK and said this.
If you live a simple, clean lifestyle, then they're not going to make as much money, and they're not going to have as much power in Washington and throughout the rest of the country. It's really about power, isn't it?
Well, it's about power and raw economic incentive. And as much as we can suggest that it's simple, it's not easy, and it's not easy by design. And in fact, it's called structural violence. And it's this collaboration of this toxic quartet, if you will, of the way big farming proliferates these cheap toxic calories. Big food picks up those calories, and they tinker with it a bit more with their food scientists to make it more addictive, to make it omnipresent. Then Big Pharma catches us on the other side and starts treating all of our sicknesses with all their diseases. And we won't even touch on big insurance and how they play a role because there isn't enough time. But the bottom line is, look at the world. It's this simple. Infertility, highest ever. Early onset cancer diagnosis up 79% over the last 3 decades. 74% of adults in America are overweight and obese. We need change. We need it now. What they're doing isn't working, and it's not working on purpose because it's profitable for the very few. And it's bankrupting Americans. It's the number one cause of bankruptcy is a health-related condition, and it's killing them. If you're afraid of RFK, you've lost your mind. Take a back seat. Let the professionals in this space handle it, and thank God when it starts improving.
Jillian Michaels, of all people, last night on Fox News. I didn't think we'd ever see that day, but here we are. So it's a fine line, right? It's still America. Eat whatever you want. But to her point, all the data she just rolled off is true. Obesity rates, all-time highs. Infertility rates keep skyrocketing. Early onset cancer diagnoses continue to increase. People, and then COVID, obviously, just destroyed people's trust in public health. Now, are there things that are maybe out there that I don't agree with RFK on? Absolutely. But as the Director of Health and Human Services in this specific role, if that is the thing that he is most passionate about, that he can play some role in, and I also think it's overblown how much he can actually do. If he becomes a face, a figurehead for making America healthy again, that's a good thing. All of these roles, all of these appointments in large part are figureheads. They're faces for whatever Donald Trump is trying to do. The policy is going to come from him, and then obviously through Congress, hopefully. But what these individuals are there to do is to be a face for fill in the blank. And in RFK's place, being the face of making America healthy again, boy, that would be a step in the right direction, would it not? And yes, there's more to it than just what we're eating, but gosh, that is a big part of it. And I'm glad that he's there. I wouldn't want him anywhere near the energy policy in this country because he's a green energy nut. But for this role and with this movement that is happening right now in the country, he's perfect. And it's apolitical. It's not meant to be political to say we got obesity rate problems, we got infertility problems, we've got cancer issues, and people do not have great trust in public health. They have let the nation down for a generation plus now, and if nothing else, maybe shake it up a little and try something new. That's all this is about.
Oh, you know what the argument's going to be?
What?
Well, the Nazis implemented exercise programs for the youth, right? Jeez. Just another sign, right? We can't, to your point, gosh. It should be apolitical. It's for the better of all of us, and yet.
You know who almost appointed RFK to a cabinet position 16 years ago? Barack Obama. Barack Obama strongly considered RFK to be his EPA director, Environmental Protection Agency. Now, I wouldn't want him anywhere near that role, but Obama seriously considered RFK for that role. And I'll just leave it at this. Thankfully, that went nowhere, and now things are coming full circle. 913-408-7957. You tell me, I don't even understand the pushback on the Make America Healthy Again deal. Now, this is not about, and here's the thing. The extremists are going to be like, he's going to remove all the vaccine mandates and no one's going to get their measles and mumps and all these other things. Like, he's not going to do that single-handedly. That's all just fear-mongering is what that is, in large part. And that's just a way to push back on this guy who, the more I think about it, I do believe he is going to get confirmed. I didn't know if he could get confirmed, but the more I'm thinking about it, based on how last week went, I do think for this role, he will get confirmed. 913-408-7957. 8 o'clock hour. It's great to be here. It's 8:15. Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. 8:20 on a Friday morning on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. I'll even do something here that I didn't think I would do. I would even issue an apology on behalf of some people who I agree with politically to Michelle Obama, who back when Obama was in office, of course, made a big push to try and make school lunches healthier when she was the first lady. Now, a lot of that, I think, was just politics. Like, well, if Obama thinks it's a good idea, it must be a bad idea. I don't remember having a strong opinion on that either way when Michelle Obama wanted to make school lunches healthier. I remember there was like kind of this outrage machine on the right of, oh, this kid, oh, you're not going to tell me what to do and you're not going to tell my kids what to eat. Well, I will say this much. In hindsight on that issue, Michelle Obama was right. But if we're all going to agree that America's got to get healthier, then, okay, fine. If I extend an olive branch and say, hey, Michelle Obama might have been onto something, why can't you come around on the other side and say, hey, RFK has some good points on trying to improve the quality of food that we ingest in this country? Isaac's in Leawood on KCMO. What's happening, man?
Hey, Mundo. Hey, just love the show, but I had a couple of things. One, I'm curious how the obesity percentage would be calculated if they take into consideration the BMI flaws, where just anecdotally, I know some folks who I would consider healthy individuals. Their body fat percentage is lower, but because of their height and their weight, it's still going to throw them into that obesity category. So I wonder if that number would be lower if they didn't rely on a flawed calculation. And just regarding the cost of eating healthy, I understand you mentioned the organic beef. If people shopped local, went to their local meat markets, I know. Me personally, we've purchased half of a cow, quarter of a cow, and that comes in at about $4 hanging weight, just for grass-fed, organic, like you said, beef. So I don't think it's really as expensive as you think. It's just taking a different approach to trying to eat healthy and getting that quality meat, vegetables, things like that from local providers.
I think you're right. I think that's an excellent point. Got to get a deep freeze in the basement for that as well, right? You got to have a place to store it.
Well, and your initial cost is going to be big up front, but I think over the long run, you're paying less per pound. So, yeah, you are correct. It is going to be expensive at your initial cost. You got to get the storage space, but it's not impossible. It's just kind of my thought.
No. You're right. I mean, you're absolutely right, and it's a great point, Isaac. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. The BMI deal. I don't know. Are there people that are considered overweight based on their BMI who you look at and you're like, that person's totally healthy? Yes. Is BMI a flawed system? Sure. I would make the case that it is in some cases. But in most cases, let's be honest, in most cases, it's probably not. All you have to do is, sometimes on my Facebook feed, maybe you see this as well. I get a lot actually from Kansas City. But you get here's a picture of downtown Kansas City from 1972. Or it'll be a picture of a beach in California from 1978. I don't know why these things get fed into my feed. It's weird how it happens with the algorithms. Mm-hmm. What do you notice? No one's overweight. I'm going to do my Biden whisper. No one's overweight, man.
Come on, man.
It's amazing.
When I went to France,
yeah,
didn't see as many. How about you?
Yes. No, you're right. And I ate like a pig when I was in Italy for a week a couple of years ago. And no one gains weight.
A lot of bread in France.
A lot of bread, a lot of pizza.
I don't know if they're doing the gluten-free thing over there as much as we do, and yet they still have better results.
They do. I mean, part of it in large part is obviously just the fact that they walk a lot more. We are a car society. They are not. That's partially based on how their cities are structured, obviously. But it's also just the food that they put into their bodies, the freshness of the food that they put into their bodies, the lack of high fructose corn syrup that is in their diet, that our government allows in large part to be put in their diet, and theirs in many cases do not allow. That's a big difference as well. It's just fresher, higher quality food.
I stayed at a B&B, and the woman says, "Hey, you want juice for breakfast?" Yeah, sure, great. She squeezed it, went down and bought fresh stuff. I'm just thinking here in America, it's just going to be concentrate or something.
Yeah.
Exactly. They went and did it fresh.
That's all it's going to be. 913-408-7957, Spring Hill. Let's go to Walter. Go ahead, my man.
Hey, Pete, I've learned just by watching the woke folks and the Democrats and their agenda, and I have to take a page from Dan Bongino's book. If you promote policies or candidates that make sense and are logical and rational, the louder the wokesters complain and bitch, that means you're on a pretty good path. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot of that going on this week. But here's where I think they've lost some credibility as well on these appointments. They were going to complain about whoever was nominated. It didn't matter. The complaints were always going to come through. Because in large part, I think that's how they try to save their ratings that are collapsing. We talked about it last hour. MSNBC is down 50% in the ratings from last month. They've got to drum up the outrage machine on this stuff to make it seem like, oh my goodness, RFK or Tulsi Gabbard or Pete Hegseth are going to single-handedly destroy the country, when in large part they are figurehead positions anyway.
Legacy media is operating with bingo cards, and they're looking to see who fits the space.
Yes,
right?
That is such a good point. in terms of what they're doing and how they're going about their business. You nailed it there. And most people are just worn out, and they're not buying it anyway. They're not. Trump's going to get in there, and the big thing I think that's going to be a huge focus early on is going to be obviously economic issues. It's going to be getting independent energy sources back up and running, Keystone Pipeline, things like that. And then there'll be a lot of noise. But my hope is that amongst all the noise and nonsense is just solid policy getting done. That, yes, there'll be distractions on because Trump loves to distract. I mean, he can't help himself. He gets bored and he throws you a curveball. And we know that now about him. That's not going to change. There will be curveballs. There will be distractions. There will be unnecessary headaches. But in between all of that is hopefully just good, solid policy when it comes to illegal immigration along the border, when it comes to continuing to try to get inflation down as quickly as possible through good energy policy. Those are the things that I think are going to be front and center when all is said and done. Not all the noise about RFK stripping vaccine mandates and whatever else, making everyone drink raw milk or something like that. I mean, come on. Just everyone calm down here.